The Economic Affairs Committee has 12 or 13 members. They cover all parties. Our main work is carrying out detailed inquiries into issues of economic policy. What we've done recently, we have a report recently on how Brexit will impact the job market here, which is also of immediate concern, I think, to everybody. What happens with these things is that we normally go about our business by interviewing lots of witnesses. Today was a rather untypical day because in most of our inquiries we wouldn't actually be talking to students, for example, the end user of the product in some ways. But we felt on this specific inquiry, which is to the financing of tertiary education, it was very important. We've been told a lot about what students think, and we thought it might be a good idea to actually ask students what they think, and that's what we've been doing this afternoon. What happens when we finish the report? We write a report, and the report is then sent to the government, and the government's got to respond to that report within 2 months. And then there is a debate, a big debate in the House of Lords about the report and about the government's response. And it's an opportunity to press the ministers and the government about the recommendations that the report makes. In other words, what are you going to do about it, if anything? And if not, why not? And it's that kind of debate at the end of the day. And that's what will happen with our current inquiry into tertiary education. I should say we're not just talking to higher education students. We're talking to further education. We're talking to people in apprenticeships as well, because we want to cover the whole ground of post-school, essentially, education. And also, we're very interested in the fact, and alarmed by, the fact that there's been a huge decline in the numbers of part-time students. It's fallen by about 60% since, I think, about 2010 or so, which is a huge and rather frightening number. And we want to go to the bottom of that. One of the reasons that's important is because life and the way people learn is changing so rapidly. The government is committed to this notion of lifelong learning. Most people are going to have to. I don't think any more people think they'll join a company when they graduate and they'll stay there until they retire. I don't think anybody thinks that now, although my generation thought exactly that. People, I think, accept they will have to retrain, maybe take a different path, as technology changes the way jobs are. And the commitment to lifelong learning on the part of the government is a kind of recognition that we need to be able to do that, to give people the opportunity to retrain or continue to learn. And that means, of course, that part-time students and mature students need that opportunity as well. And we're worried that the current system doesn't really do that.
Do you know why there's been a decrease in part-time learning?
The inquiry is only... So the short answer to the question is no, we're not certain yet. People have told us their view about why they think that's the case. And HEFCE, for example, our Education Funding Council for England, has actually said that it thinks it's largely due to the fee system that isn't really user-friendly for part-time or mature students. But we haven't reached our own conclusion yet.
Oh, okay. What information did you take from today's meetings, if you're allowed to share?
Well, I'm not sure I'm allowed to share exactly what people said to us, but I can perhaps answer the question by telling you what the questions were.
Yeah.
Briefly, yes. Sorry, I won't go through them in detail. We asked people why they chose to go to university. We asked them about the loan system, whether they thought they understood it, whether they understood it, whether they felt it was in fact a loan or a debt, or how they thought about it. We asked them also about maintenance loans, because some of our other witnesses have described maintenance loans as too low, and the gap between what you need to live at university and what the maintenance loans provide. So that's an area that we asked the students about. We also asked them whether or not they were worried about the fact that now a lot of graduates are working in what appear to be non-graduate jobs. and we wondered whether or not that was a worry for the people we were talking to downstairs. We also then asked about what they thought they were going to do next. In some cases that was obviously an unfair question, because as one of our students pointed out, this was her first year at university, and that was a hugely premature question. But we wanted to know how they felt, and we wanted to know whether they felt that university had been value for money. And of course, that does depend on how you think about value, as well as how you think about the money. And we explored all those things. So that's what we've been doing. But of course, I can't tell you what they said, but it will be, I can say that it has been extremely useful and will really help when we come to writing our report. There's been a lot of controversy recently about the way students are financed. A lot of controversy, and of course we're conscious of the fact that there's a very large increase in tuition fees. Maintenance grants were replaced by maintenance loans. So there's been radical change in the system. People have woken up to the fact that there is an interest rate at the top level of about 6.1%, and that's caused a lot of publicity. So all of those things meant, of course, that this is a highly topical issue and a pressing issue, because it does need some clarity, I think. And the government itself, of course, has announced a review of the student finance system. I mean, we don't know what kind of review or when or whatever, but certainly it's an indication that this is a live subject. And one of the things about our reports is we try and produce reports that actually might have some effect on current political thinking. And it seems that this topic is so timely that it's likely that this report might have some effect on how the government thinks about the future.
So, people from different socio-economic backgrounds, were they fairly represented today?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. We were very careful about that, and about having part-time and mature students and people with disabilities as well. So we tried, I mean, you can't replicate the entire population in detail, because we had, I think, only about 50 or 60 people down there. But we went to great lengths to make sure that the different sectors were represented reasonably.
Yeah, I mean, the reason that I wanted to ask that in particular is because I am from quite a working class background, and particularly the thought of loans is, for people who are from a similar background to me, is so stressful that I wanted to, see if that opinion had come across.
Well, I can't. I mean, we were split up into 8 tables, and so I was only on one table, so I can't speak for the entire group. And anyway, I couldn't really talk about the conclusions that we might have reached. But I would say that there is a lot of hard statistical evidence which shows that the people from the less well-off classes have not been put off going to university. So I think a lot of people expected that would happen for the reasons you've given, but there's no evidence, hard statistical evidence, that is the case. I go to speak in schools on Fridays when we're not sitting, and I've been doing that for 8 years or so, 7 years or so. And when I first started doing that, and these are to sixth formers, they were enormously exercised by student loans, because it was just after I crossed the boundary between 3,000 and 9,000. So it was obviously a headline concern for these kids and their parents. And a lot of the questions I got at the end of all these visits were about student loans. But now you fast forward to last year and this year, I get almost no questions about student loans. And it may be that's because they're simply accepted as a fact of life, that if you go to university, that's what the system is. Maybe people don't think about it in the way they did when it was either introduced or radically increased in price. But that's a guess. I mean, I'm just observing that I don't get asked the same kind of questions anymore. Point was, I think educating people to tertiary level, does two things. It provides a personal benefit, I think, for most people. And I think most people would admit that. They might argue about the extent, but I think they would admit it provides a personal benefit. But it also provides a public benefit, because having a more educated and more skilled population is of benefit to us all, to the country as a whole. So I would argue that higher education is both a public good and a private benefit. And because I think it's both of those things, I think it's reasonable that the cost of it should be shared between the individual and the state. And I think fees are a way of doing that. I'm not arguing that the current system is ideal or that there aren't any failings in it. But the basic principle that the cost of education, higher education, should be shared between the beneficiary and society, I think is pretty good.
Yeah.
I should stress that I'm not at all saying the system's perfect and can't be improved. But the underlying principle of it I find reasonably attractive, which is the cost of this, because it's both a public and a private good, should be shared between the state and the individual.
Yeah.
Quite where the line is, of course, is not straightforward.
Talking about that line, do you think that because different courses cost different amounts, so say biology, where you need access to
or medicine or engineering.
Do you think something like that should then have a higher tuition fee to something that doesn't cost as much, so say something along the lines of like accounting, mathematics, anything along, or where the resource demand isn't as high as something?
Well, I think it's a very difficult question to answer. Because elementary fairness might suggest that that's the way ahead. But the consequences of doing it that way would that an engineering degree would be unaffordable to most people. Because if you had to pay the true cost of an engineering degree, I mean, which is enormous.
Yeah, my father's an engineer.
Well, or nuclear physics or something, the cost would increase gigantically. It's true that the cost of taking the mathematics degree would decrease, but I'm not sure that that benefits society in general. One of the advantages of the current system, it seems to me, is it spreads the load across all the subjects, so that no one subject is kind of out of reach of a cohort of people.